Welcome to In the Green Room. I'm Kinga.
And I'm Chet.
And this is Martin. Welcome, everyone. And we have a special guest today, Mr. Ingo Mahn.
Doctor.
Doctor, excuse me, not Mr.
Dr. Ingo
Screw
Mahn.
that Mr. stuff.
So cheers to that. We are here.
Yes.
And it's a happy birthday to Chet.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Chet.
Birthday.
And the reason why it's so perfect having Doc on the show, Dr. Ingo Mahn, who's a holistic doctor and also a dentist, is because I think we're going to be eating lots of sweets on this birthday. And I don't know anybody that eats more sweets than my son, Chet. So it's good for us to talk about all this on his birthday.
Well, we will take care of him if he has any issues.
So you're his new dentist.
All right, awesome.
So introduce yourself. What do you want the world to know about you?
Give us your pitch. Tell us who you are.
Oh boy, well, I've had an interesting journey getting here. I actually was born in Milwaukee, and my parents, when I was 1 year old, decided in their infinite wisdom to take a train from Milwaukee to New York and take a boat back to Germany. So my whole family is German.
Okay.
You sound, I love your accent. It sounds great. German.
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Germany till I was 12 years old and they decided to come back over here in 1972. I was 12 years old, didn't speak English, was the smallest kid, and I had a funny name, and found out there was some stupid farmer who had a dog named Bingo. So I got picked on a lot when I was in
I believe
junior
that.
high school. Was a treat, but
Yes.
and
So Ingo is because of the dog. That's how you're.
No.
See, I was
no,
in
Oh
I
my
junior
just-
God,
high-
no, that's how they made fun of him.
That's how they
Yeah,
made
yeah.
Oh.
See, no, in junior high I was Fartin' Martin. So.
That sounds about as good
Right,
as
that's about
Bingo.
that.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought you said your parents knew a dog named Bingo. And
No.
they named
Oh
you
my
Bingo.
God.
Oh, nice one, King.
And
Bingo wasn't
Way
a name
to
out.
insult our guests, right?
No. So yeah, so I spent the next 40 years in Wisconsin. I went to Marquette Dental School, went to undergrad and Marquette Dental School, and practiced for actually over 30 years in Milwaukee. Started out getting trained very conventionally, like most dentists do, and it wasn't really till about 15 years into my practice that I was always the kind of person who wanted to dig deeper. I always wanted to know the why. I always was looking for a better way to do things. And so I was always very high tech, and I got into some really cool CAD/CAM stuff. I showed you that machine this morning that makes the crowns in one visit. And
In one visit, you can take care of the whole.
Yes, I've seen that
crown.
technology. It's
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah, it's some fun. And being German, you know, I come from a family of German engineers, so
Nice.
you know, German engineers think they're like right up there with the supreme being. So if you become a dentist, it's almost like you're like the black sheep in the family. So when I came home with a piece of CAD/CAM technology that said Siemens on it, I was like, all right, you're okay now. You get to sit at the big kids table again. And so I just always enjoyed learning more. And once I kind of learned about the mercury and amalgams, that's really what kind of first woke me up that there's a better way to do something. And then you start digging deeper. You're like, wait a minute, none of this stuff was ever taught to us in dental school.
Well, how
And-
did you decide I want to be a dentist? But was your dad a dentist? Was your grandpa a dentist?
You know,
or a doctor?
no, my grandfather was actually, this was back in Germany, he was a model maker. So he would carve the forms he carved the form for the first German telephone, and he was an artist as well. So he would paint, he would do wood carvings, he would just make little things out of anything. And so I was like that artistic side, and then I had that German engineering side of me. And I actually decided in ninth grade I wanted to become a dentist.
I love that.
Yeah. And
Wow.
So it's nice to have that mission and
Well, it is an art form because you're really taking it's art to create a nice smile. If you're doing corrective cosmetic dentistry, right?
And I did go through that phase of cosmetic dentistry. I kind of was very high tech, then I got into cosmetic, and then that's when I started to do a lot of things metal free. Because with the cosmetic, the technology was now around to do the white fillings and do things without metal. And that's when I also started going, wait a minute, not only is it prettier, it's also healthier for you.
Well, it's interesting you talk about the metal because I've been battling that for several years. Where it had a lot of cavities when I was young, filled with the metal, with the mercury and I don't know what the amalgam is, but it's a lot of nasty stuff from what I understand. It
Well,
also
it's
expands.
55% mercury, so they call them silver fillings, even though they're 40% silver and 55% mercury.
So my wife now has an excuse of why I'm so crazy. which is great. But
We
it
love
also
sharing.
expands and contracts and can break your teeth. That's when I found out about it. Is I had a broken, had a tooth break, and went into a doctor or a dentist, dentist that has a similar philosophy as what you're talking about, and helped me understand, how dangerous that was for the rest of my teeth. And so over the last probably 2 years, we've been just slowly taking care of them one at a time, eliminating. So I've got my last one in April. And so I find it very interesting because it sounds like this is not a common thing in dentistry, which I thought it was.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's I think it's getting more common that now that the knowledge is out there, but it used to be really hard for people to get that knowledge. But I remember one dentist, he said, I call amalgams crown seeds, because you put that amalgam filling in a tooth, and because of that expansion and contraction, it cracks the tooth, and all of a sudden a chunk of the tooth breaks off, and next thing you know, you need a root canal and a crown and all this stuff. And so to me, I was kind of baffled that it took us this long, that we kept having discussions about something that's not only bad for you, but it's ugly.
It is ugly.
Yeah, it's like, why are we arguing about why to do these? But there was a lot of pushback for many years, and dentists who were, holistic dentists actually had kind of a bullseye on their back from boards. I was telling you the story. There was a time when I was practicing in Wisconsin that I knew I wanted to leave, and I got a license to practice in California. And there was a time when when I told a patient that there's mercury in silver fillings in Wisconsin, the board would literally come after me. If I went the next week to California and I didn't tell a patient there was mercury in the amalgam, the board would come after me. So there's
interesting.
You think there's science behind what we do in dentistry? No, it's like everything else. It's mainly politics and.
How do you feel about that,
amazing.
Chet? And do you have how many fillings do you have in your mouth?
I think 3, yeah.
Are yours white or do you have mercury?
No, they're porcelain remover, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that the material they use?
It's most of the direct fillings are called composites. So there's what are called direct fillings, where you put the stuff in and shine the light on it, and then there are the indirect restorations like crowns and inlays and onlays, like the ones that we make with that machine, they're quite a bit stronger, and they last quite a bit longer.
One thing that I realized is that last time I went to the dentist after COVID, and I had no symptoms of any cavities, and they just were like, oh yeah, you have 3 small cavities, we should put in 3 fillings. And I didn't get a second opinion. I feel like I should have gotten a second opinion, because it's like a known thing that sometimes they'll tell you there's a cavity when there's not. And I think I did a pretty good job of taking care of my teeth. I think I was just overdue for a cleaning. But
How often should we clean our teeth?
There's a lot of debate about that, because if you follow someone like Weston A. Price, he went to these quote-unquote primitive societies that didn't have toothbrushes, didn't have dentists. They ate this great diet, and they had perfect jaws, perfect teeth. So really for us, it's more, we say twice a year. Believe it or not, talk about science behind something. That was from a toothpaste jingle back in the 50s. It was like, see your dentist twice a year, and it's stuck. So that's the science behind seeing your dentist twice a year. But it's a great way to just kind of,
check in on things and see, make sure, because that's I had a tooth crack and didn't even know it until I went in for a cleaning, and then found out. And that, again, that's kind of went down my journey with the metal filling. So I think it is important. One thing I'm curious is, what do you see as the real difference between a holistic doctor, holistic dentist, and
Good question.
Run-of-the-mill doctor or dentist?
Probably the biggest thing is just that we look at the impact things going on in the mouth have on the rest of the body. And it's kind of known as the focal infection theory, meaning that, for example, an infection in your mouth could affect another part of your body. And that was really what was poo-pooed by the general dental community for many years. And it wasn't until they discovered with gum disease that having gum disease could contribute to cardiovascular disease, to diabetes, to low weight babies. And so it kind of opened that door, but it's still, we're still much more concerned about how we take out the amalgams. So for example, when you get those amalgams taken out, it's crucial that you do that safely, that you use like vacuum and then also
wait, hold on.
When you talk to somebody and they have that like pirate breath, does that mean that they probably have like gum disease or some type of decay going on? Because I talked to somebody, I went to a concert on Saturday. I forgot which one of my friends it was, but I was talking to them and I got that whiff and I was like, oh my God, like they need to brush their teeth. They need a full-on dentist appointment.
Well, you know, the bacteria that cause gum disease put out these sulfur compounds. And you can actually, there's a test, you can, like a breathalyzer, and you can measure these volatile sulfur compounds. And you're right, like now when I walk into a room with a patient, and we don't get as many patients with gum disease anymore with the holistic patients, but when there's someone that has gum disease, you literally smell these sulfur compounds, like almost like rotten eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be rough.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, something that I need you to explain is gum disease. You know, when people hear gum disease, that could just be you're not flossing your teeth.
Well,
What causes gum disease?
the gum disease is caused by bacteria, and it's really once they get underneath the gum line and they start breaking down the tissue, and it gets to be this vicious cycle because the first thing that happens is the gums get inflamed and get a little swollen, so the pockets get deeper, and that makes it harder to get down into the pockets. So once it gets started, then you kind of need an intervention like a deep cleaning. But yeah, it's the bacteria that get down below the gum line that we can't clean out properly.
And doing it, if you get your teeth cleaned maybe every 4 months, can that be helpful, or
yeah,
can it
I
be
mean-
harmful to overdo?
No, but people who have gum disease, we do have them sometimes come in 3 or 4 times a year. And but our goal is always, my goal is for someone not to need me to do that. We're always looking, how do we treat the root cause? Because there can be different things that contribute to the gum disease also from a standpoint of how's your immune system working. And so sometimes you can look in the mouth and actually, when you see gum disease, it could actually be an indicator of a systemic problem, like, you know, diabetes and things like that will manifest themselves in the oral cavity.
Interesting. And is it true that if you have gum disease from lack of hygiene, can you get Alzheimer's or heart disease?
Absolutely. You know, for years it's very difficult to culture the bacteria from gum disease because they're actually what are called anaerobes. So when you have these anaerobic bacteria, they're much harder to culture than like staph bacteria. So it wasn't until they had almost like the CSI type technology where they could take bacteria from the bloodstream. And it's kind of funny that it's called plaque in the arteries and it's called plaque in the mouth.
Interesting.
And so they actually could show, yes, the origin of these bacteria is the oral cavity. So once they get into the bloodstream, they attach to the wall, and then it's almost like throwing a rock into a stream. You start creating that turbulence, more bacteria and more plaque builds up, and that's how the bacteria from the bloodstream can, you know, cause restricted blood flow. And of course, restricted blood flow to the brain or anywhere is generally not a good thing.
So when you're getting your teeth cleaned and the debris coming off and the tartar's coming off and that bacteria, if that's not fully vacuumed really well and you're swallowing that, can that be dangerous?
Generally not from swallowing it, and we use things like ozonated water and some different things like that to try to mitigate that as well.
But I had a great experience today with Leah.
Leah's awesome.
Leah made me laugh. If you guys want a great experience and just laugh the whole time, I mean, she was hilarious and very gentle and very beautiful. Leah in your office.
Yeah,
she's Dr. Ingo Mahn.
She's very thorough and still, yeah, it gives you a really great experience.
Yeah, it was amazing. I thought she was one of the best ever.
Good.
Yes.
I'm
All
glad
right,
you had a
so
good
we've
experience.
talked about cleanings every 6 months. So everyday care, that's obviously probably the
good
most
question.
important thing. Flossing at least once a day. Is there certain types of toothpaste you recommend? I'm really interested in that because I was having a background in environmental chemistry and did environmental disinfection, and so that's kind of what you're doing in the mouth when you're using a mouthwash or using a toothpaste is actually killing bacteria. They've used triclosan, they've used many different other antibacterials in toothpaste. From a naturopathic standpoint, what do you guys recommend? What do you see as being the best?
Well, probably the biggest thing is, just avoiding fluoride.
Wait, avoiding fluoride?
Fluoride is horrible.
Chad's been saying that for quite a while, and I believe him.
You know what? I never knew that much. I just knew about fluoride what I learned in dental school.
Well, it's bizarre how much conflicting opinion there is on it. Like, there's a lot of people who say that fluoride is so bad for, like, hormones, mental health, a lot of side effects. And then there's some people who try to say that it's still beneficial for your teeth, so you should use it sometimes. So is there any truth to that?
Well, I think you have to, this kind of happened when a community in Wisconsin asked me to speak. They were having the fluoridation debate. Should we put fluoride in the water? And they asked me to speak. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a dentist. I know about fluoride. Well, I had no clue. Like when I started researching it, I was shocked. So really you almost have to break fluoride into topical fluoride versus ingesting fluoride. And so there are really no studies that show that ingesting fluoride has any benefit. As a matter of fact, there's a guy named Dave Kennedy who's part of our organization, who's done a lot of research, and he says fluoride's like suntan lotion. It doesn't work by drinking it. So there can be some benefit to topical fluoride, but there are actually a lot of other things that are
What's better? What's better?
Well, we use toothpaste that have things like hydroxyapatite, which help remineralize teeth. We also, and it's not always just about killing the bacteria. There's obviously, good bacteria and bad bacteria. So we're also not necessarily saying we just need to kill all the bacteria in the mouth, because you can cause some problems.
If you think topical fluoride can be beneficial, do you think it is good to use a fluoride toothpaste then sometimes, and then just be careful that you don't ingest it? Or do you think it's better to just use a fluoride-free toothpaste?
I think if you what you're really doing, you could have a perfectly healthy mouth and not use any fluoride at all.
Okay, cool.
What you're really trying to do when you're brushing is you're trying to disrupt the biofilm. And like I was saying, these bacteria in the mouth are actually anaerobic. So when you get that layer of plaque, you actually have dead bacteria protecting the live bacteria at the tooth surface. And you also kind of create this gradient. For example, sugar actually kills bacteria. That's why you use it in preserves. Use high concentrations of sugar. That's why honey doesn't spoil. And so that biofilm is a certain thickness that creates the proper low concentration of sugar that bacteria can thrive in. So when you go in there with a toothbrush and just disrupt that biofilm, it's actually very effective. I mean, the oral care industry, it's $1 billion industry. They're really just putting stuff out there to try to make as much money. And there's always
get minty fresh.
Right. Yeah. Well, we used fluoride gas in manufacturing to basically plug the holes of plastic. So we would take plastic bottles, and if we had a particular type of oil that could penetrate that plastic, and we would use fluoride gas to basically plug the holes. And that's what they're doing with the teeth, right? Because your teeth under a microscope are like mountainous, right? And so they use the fluoride to kind of fill in some of the gaps. But it's not good for you, health-wise. It's like you said, it's like suntan lotion. I love that analogy.
So it's interesting. My grandma, that lived to be 105, thriving and healthy till a couple days before she died, lived on her own, in her home. Nobody was there taking care of her except for this lady that would come in and help her take a shower, and help her wash her hair. She walked miles a day. She always used fluoride. She lived healthy and happy for all those years. So how could somebody live to be 105 and use fluoride if it's so dangerous?
Well, I think we all, look, you hear of people living to be 110 and they're smoking and drinking, and
that's true.
It's like
cheers.
Cheers to that.
Cheers. And we're here saving the planet.
One birthday at a time.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Chet.
Happy birthday, Chet.
And I think especially this is something that didn't come out till there was a big study. The fluoride study was done in the early 50s in Michigan. They fluoridated, I believe it was Grand Rapids, and Muskegon was a control city. It was supposed to be a 10-year study. They discontinued the study after 3 years, saying, look, there's been a 70% drop in the rate of decay in the city we fluoridated. And everybody's like, hallelujah, fluoride's so great. Well, it wasn't until years later, talk about making numbers lie without lying, they found that the city that was the control city had the identical drop in the rate of decay. And so it was right at that time when Colgate was like, see your dentist twice a year, and people, because before people didn't even know what caused cavities, because or gum disease. It used to be people, if you had gum disease, they're like, well, let's just pull your teeth and give you dentures, because eventually
that's what happened to my dad. Yeah, when he was in his 30s, they just pulled all of his teeth and he had dentures in his
oh my gosh.
I know, can you imagine?
But something I didn't say about my grandma is when she was about 70, all of a sudden she had you need this, you need root canal, and so they told her to pull all her teeth. And so at that point then she was she had dentures. And then also Richard Betts, who's a regular on this show, he said I could mention this, and he wants to do another show with you. He did the whole clear choice thing. He did a full implant in his mouth because same thing. All of a sudden it got to the point where, you know, it was going to cost him like $100,000 to fix all his teeth, and it was all diseased, and so they yanked it all out. How do you feel about implants?
Well, just to get back to that story about having those teeth pulled, because my dad being an engineer was a little bit, when I got into the holistic stuff, he was a little skeptical. And then one day he said, you know, my brother-in-law was always sick, and he always had gum disease, and he always had all these problems. He goes, you know, once he got his teeth pulled, all of a sudden all his health issues disappeared. So I think it's really beneficial. Obviously your teeth are really important, not just for properly chewing foods, but they sit in a socket and they actually move all of the lymphatics in your head and neck area. So it's really important has a lot of other functions. But having infected and root canal teeth, that's highly detrimental. So you're better off having no teeth than infected teeth. So
that's a good, okay.
When he said that, he said, you know what, I think you're onto something. Like maybe those you know, nasty teeth can really have an effect on your health.
Ironically, I'm not going to say the last name or anything, but the Ray we all know, that had, you know, the quadruple bypass.
Right.
He had a lot of trouble with his teeth. And ironically, Dina kept saying, you should just have all those teeth pulled. She's probably right.
Interesting.
One question I have is, what are the top, or like your top 3 recommended fluoride-free toothpaste brands? Because there's a lot of them out there.
Right. Do you sell your own? Do you recommend? Yeah, or do you recommend others?
I don't sell my own. I have a lot of our patients actually make their own toothpaste, sometimes just using something like baking soda, which is actually very effective. There's one toothpaste by a company called Risewell that we really like. Again, it's a hydroxyapatite containing toothpaste. There's the Dental Herb company that makes a really nice toothpaste, and there's actually one based out of right up the road from our office in Scottsdale called Oral, ORL, and he was going to make another product, and he says, one day I'm standing at the Sprouts and I'm looking at all of these toothpaste, and he was a chemical engineer. He says, I'm looking at the ingredients even in supposedly natural toothpaste. He's like, wait a minute, there's a lot of junk in a lot of these things like glycerin. And,
what do you think of Tom's?
I think Tom's used to be better. People don't realize that they've been bought by
and sold,
So I guess I'm a little cynical, so I don't trust them anymore. So,
okay.
Maybe for good reason, but
so it's not one we should be purchasing. What toothpaste should we? I mean, is there like 3 toothpaste?
He's been answering that, but I have used Dr. Bronner's before, which is a fluoride-free one, and I've like always like the way it leaves my mouth feeling very clean, and
I think that's what it comes down to, is like a personal preference. It's really, if you do a thorough job with the brushing, like I said, you wouldn't even need a toothpaste. So find something that has as few ingredients as possible. You know what? I mean, I have patients that literally go, I take a drop of spearmint, like essential oil, and just brush with that, and you know,
the spearmint will kill probably everything that's in there.
And we have a lot of people, you know, do the oil pulling that are swishing with that are.
Tell us about that, because my sister always talks about this oil pulling and how healthy it is. Can you tell us about that a little? And do you recommend it?
Yeah, I was a little bit skeptical at first, because it kind of almost sounded like it was supposed to pull toxins out of your body. I'm like, well, you know, show me a study that shows. I mean, you should be able to easily go, here, let's switch with that oil, spit it out, let's analyze it,
and then take the blood test before and after.
Exactly, right? and show what's in the oil that you spit out. And then a lot of my patients were doing it, and they came back and their gums were absolutely beautiful, and their teeth look good. So it's a great way to disrupt that biofilm in the mouth.
So is it coconut oil that we're recommending?
Mainly. Initially, I think they started with sunflower oil and things like that, but coconut oil is probably
that's one that she recommends.
Yeah, no, that's
coconut oil.
That's a good one. And now there's been all kinds of, like, people add things to it and kind of ramp it up a little bit.
Make it taste a little better.
Yeah. Because I think that's kind of ultimate. Like, you brush your teeth, you want that nice minty fresh breath.
100%.
Well, it's interesting. If you have perfect hygiene in your mouth and it's all good to go, you give us the, you know, green stamp, and then you're out there dating. Is it contagious to get if somebody has that bacteria in their mouth.
Oh, absolutely.
And because I'm a germaphobe, you know, I was married for like 30
Don't
years.
share your toothbrush.
I mean, somebody has
It's a good
to
way
have
to
a
inoculate
somebody
yourself.
has to have a full-on test before I'm even gonna give a kiss. So this is a true story. So with this gum disease, like let's say somebody's completely all gum disease, disgusting, and you kiss them, can you get that?
Absolutely. I mean,
gross.
those bacteria are transmissible. One of the I don't actually use toothpaste myself. There's a product called Closis.
Oh, I love that product.
Oh yeah, I
and
love
it's chlorine dioxide, and it actually does a really great job. Those volatile sulfur compounds. It actually, because Listerine, for example, is horrible. It's 30-some% alcohol.
I just threw that away.
Yeah, and it's a local Arizona company, which I love. I've gone and toured their facility. I've talked to those guys. We were working on a partnership with them, but that's the same thing. I use.
Wait, this is a big news thing that Listerine is bad then.
Oh, Listerine is awful.
So is it like literally cause more bacteria, or like why is it bad?
Well,
it's just
alcohol.
It's high alcohol, so what it
You
does,
don't drink it.
but it dehydrates your oral membrane, so it works for a very short time, and then your breath actually gets worse. So with the Closis, they can actually show that the volatile sulfur compounds keep going. Your breath actually keeps getting better for like 4 or 5 hours afterwards.
Absolutely. And
interesting.
And underneath your tongue is one of the most absorbent areas of your mouth. And so when you rinse with things that are poisonous, like Listerine and things like that, that actually gets into your bloodstream, goes straight into your bloodstream. It's called sublingual, I believe. And so Closis, I actually had a chlorine dioxide, helped create a chlorine dioxide disinfectant, and it's basically a salt-based, and I actually, for the cannabis industry. And
so interesting.
It is by far the most amazing disinfectant that's available. And so I was excited to meet these guys and talk to them about the research they've done, and like the mouthwash. I think it's 2 ingredients. It's water and sodium chloride, and maybe a little mint oil, and that's it. And it works so well.
And it's nice. They have the they carry it at Walgreens, which is nice. And don't get the mint. The cool mint is horrible.
Yeah. Just to
get the unflavored. It actually has a little vial of the spearmint oil. And I'll tell you what, like anytime, sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and you get that little I think I'm getting a little bit of a sore throat. I'll take it, gargle with it, and I'll actually swallow. You can swallow it. I actually have a.
Oh, really? It's not dangerous.
No,
you don't want to swallow Listerine.
No. Well, that's the weird thing. Those little patches. Sometimes people will be popping those Listerine patches.
Oh
for
yeah,
your breath.
I know which ones you're talking about. They dissolve
the strips or whatever.
Oh my gosh, those are disgusting. And
They're
a couple times I've had a long time ago when those first came out, I had a couple, and it instantly gives me a stomachache. I mean, how can that be even safe? Like,
I don't think they even tell you all this stuff that's.
Oh, no.
I mean,
Oh my gosh.
material safety data sheets only give you like 85% of what's in there, so they don't tell you the really bad stuff. I'm sure they leave that out.
So we always want to get Closis. Do you use Closis?
No, I'm learning about that Listerine. It's bad. That's a new information to me.
Such good. And they have a toothpaste and they have a mouthwash. And like you said, they've got the flavored one, which is horrible. The unflavored ones, and the toothpaste has a little bit of a minty kind of thing, but I think it's actually peppermint oil is what they use to.
Like I said, I take a little swig of it, swish with it. And then I'll floss.
That's what I do.
And then I'll just take my toothbrush and then maybe do one more rinse with it. But I don't even use. Most toothpastes are designed to be abrasive to remove stains, and so like you don't need that abrasion in your toothpaste. And the other thing I like about chlorine dioxide, there's actually a guy named Andrew Klocker, some German guy, and he talks about microdosing with the chlorine dioxide for example, if you've had the vaccine and you decide, hey, maybe I shouldn't have done that, it'll actually, you can microdose with the chlorine dioxide. It'll oxidize spike protein and break down microclots. And he says, people accuse me like, you're telling me to drink bleach and blah, blah, blah. It's like,
no, this is very, very different. Sodium chloride is there's sodium chloride in other things that we consume. But
chlorine dioxide.
Well, yeah, but sodium chloride is what they use to create the chlorine dioxide in the water. So what happens is that the sodium chloride, when it goes into your mouth, it actually reacts with the carbon-based material, and then has an oxygen reaction.
Okay.
And so the only output is water and salt, NaCl. That's it. So it's so basically, if you swallowed it, all it's going to turn into is salt water in your stomach, and I've heard the same things that you're talking about. There's a lot of controversy around that,
Yeah.
so I doubt we want to dive too deep into this show.
Okay, so-
but I'm with you 100%.
Well, I have a big question
I
here.
didn't get here by avoiding controversy.
Yes.
So tell us about your tooth organ on your website.
Oh, the tooth organ chart?
Yeah.
The tooth
Yeah, that was-
organ chart.
Oh, it was fascinating. The first time I saw it, I go, okay, this is crazy. So it's a chart with shows all your teeth, and then it has all these different organs, like for example, wisdom teeth connected to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, all right, this seems a little wacky, but then I found out there were like 100 German physicians that spent 40 years. So they started out wanting to chart the acupuncture meridians. So they're like, they're Germans, we want to find out exactly what these are, you know? So they started using these very sensitive ohm meters to try to figure out where these energy meridians are. And in the process, they just realized that there's a really high concentration running through the head and neck area. And they got it down to like very specific organs, even joints, and it's wild. On our website,
What is your website? How do people find you?
if you go to mynaturaldentist.com, there's actually a tab for the tooth organ chart, and it's kind of cool because you can click on a tooth and it shows you all the organs, or you can say, hey, I've got a problem with my kidneys. What teeth are related to that? So you can kind of go both ways.
All right, say the website again.
mynaturaldentist.com.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next question, if somebody is prone to getting sore throats, can that have something to do with their dental hygiene or any tooth decay or infection?
I mean, potentially. I haven't really seen.
And this is not me.
I mean, the sore throat, I think, is not necessarily related to. I mean, it can be obviously bacteria from there, but I don't necessarily see. Excuse me. Let's see. Talk about sore throats. I'm gonna cough.
Do you take Delta Dental? I guess.
Delta Dental is the reason I told the insurance companies to go take a hike.
Really?
Yes.
They're not great.
No, they're not. They started telling me like what I could charge for services that they weren't even covering, and I could tell you all kinds of stories about Delta Dental. So in our practice, we still, people are able to use their insurance, but we don't take what's called assignment of benefits. So in most practices, you go in, you have your work done, and then they wait to get paid by the insurance company. And once the dentist gets the check from the insurance company, they bill the patient for the difference. So that takes a lot of manpower. And so what we decided to do is that patients basically pay for their treatment up front, and we try to, make it very affordable. We either give them a nice discount for paying up front, or we do interest-free financing for up to a year through Care Credit. And then what happens is we still file their claim, and now with digital, it's nice.
That's smart.
We can attach like digital x-rays and a narrative and all the stuff. And then the check basically just goes from the insurance company to the patient. Because I would literally need probably 3 or 4 employees just
To deal with that.
Just to deal with that.
What a
and-
hassle.
And it reflects in the fees. So,
So
I'm trying
question,
to,
that x-ray machine that went all the way around my head this morning, it's
The new
healthier.
digital technology.
Yes.
Is
It's
crazy.
insane.
Tell us about that. Why is that 90% healthier for your body than regular x-rays?
Well, it's the way the x-rays are generated. So there's 2 ways to generate x-ray. One is alternating current. And without trying to get too technical, you're basically going through a cycle where there's a +1 at the top, a -1 at the bottom, and then 0 in the middle. So as you're going through that 60 hertz cycle, you're producing really nice, clean, strong x-rays at the top and bottom, and they penetrate the tissue and expose the film. It's all that middle band that has not enough power to penetrate the tissue, so it gets in your tissue, bounces around, the free radicals cause damage. So the technology we use is DC generated, so it goes up to full power and it stays there. So not only are you eliminating most of the radiation, it's all that bad radiation. You're only using the nice, we try to minimize the x-rays as much as possible.
What was incredible is after we took the x-rays, doctor was able to go through the whole video of like my skull
Yeah, isn't
It
it
was
amazing
it
the
was
stuff you
amazing.
can see? Like
It was
you-
amazing. So he was able to check everywhere on my skull and all the way down. You explain it. Like, it was really
Well, it's
incredible.
literally a CT scan, and the reason it's low in radiation is not just the way it's generated. We're also not, when you hear of an abdominal or thoracic CT, they're imaging soft tissues, so the amount of dosage that you need is significantly higher. So the dosage that we need, just to, we're looking mainly at bony structures. So the dosage is literally like one of these panoramic x-rays that gives you very limited information. With this, we can use that to plan implants. For example, if you're missing a tooth, we can look in cross-section, make sure you have enough bone. We can find all kinds of, if there's any like potential pathology we can find.
And you can find out if there's cancer, right?
Exactly.
Which is incredible. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, and when you
Never.
come back, I'll show
Yes.
you. You can even look at your airway. So I can take a section of your trachea and actually analyze the airway in 3D. So it's really,
It's incredible.
yeah, it's fun because once you have that technology, you can't go back because it's
Right.
it's like having an iPhone and going back to a rotary dial.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not
Another-
happening.
Another thing that Doc Ingo Mahn is famous for is helping
I'm
people
famous for
sleep better.
something.
For helping people sleep better.
Yeah.
And Chet, don't you have some contraption that goes in your mouth when you sleep? What's that about?
It's just like a retainer thing, yeah.
Okay, so
Or like
okay.
more of a mouth guard,
Yeah.
so you don't grind your teeth.
Okay, so it's not for your airways for snoring or anything. Okay, but you help people with getting better
Well,
sleep.
the interesting thing is, like, why do people grind their teeth? And we actually now know that a lot of the grinding is as you're, we talk, it's actually called, sleep apnea is a lot of times called obstructive sleep apnea. So the obstruction comes from as you lay down and your airway collapses and your tongue falls back, it's due to loss of muscle tone. And so what happens is when that starts to happen, your body will actually go, wait a minute, oxygen is number one on the list of priority, so that clenching and grinding is actually a way for you to keep that airway toned and open. And we now know that that's primarily what clenching and grinding is not a bite issue like I was taught for 40 years. And putting a mouth guard in there does help you from destroying your teeth, but it generally, like, why did all my patients grind through their mouth guards if it's a bite issue? Like, your teeth aren't touching, but you're still grinding.
So how do you? Okay, so let's say you identify this is an issue with this X-ray, and now what's the next step? What do you do?
Well, I spent years researching this because I didn't like the solution that Dentistry had, which is basically, and it's actually an effective solution. It basically is an appliance that's an alternative to CPAP that just holds your jaw forward, so it just keeps your jaw and tongue from dropping back into the airway. And I'm like, well, it doesn't fix anything. And the problem is, if you wear one of those devices, every morning you have to wear something called an AM repositioner. So every morning, your jaw and teeth are so messed up that you have to bite into this little device to basically get everything back to how it was the night before. Well, you can do that for a while, but your body does not like doing that for too long. So after about a year and a half, all of a sudden your teeth don't fit together, your joints start to hurt, and now you have to have a conversation with the patient like, well, now you're a sleep apnea patient and you have teeth that don't fit together and TMJ problems.
So what are we going to do to avoid that?
So
like, what should I do? What should we do?
So I finally found these epigenetic appliances that actually tone the muscles at the base of the tongue. They remodel the airway and they completely downregulate the autonomic nervous system. And I went through a bunch of learning to try to do that. Eventually, I was fortunate enough to study with a guy named Dr. Ted Balfour, who's very prominently featured in James Nestor's book Breath, which a lot of people have read. That I was so mad when I read that book. I go, really? I just spent 10 years going to all these. I said, I don't even know how much money I spent. I go, I read this book by a journalist and I learned more reading that. But he was the first guy that, he was on the same mission as I am. He wanted to know, why do we have these problems? How do we fix the root cause?
Because I like solutions.
Yes,
So
I do too. I don't like if you put a Band-Aid on something, like, it'll work, but eventually it's going to come back to bite you in a different way. So I'm like, how do we fix this problem? And it's been really, I was literally looking to, I came down here from Wisconsin to almost like retire from dentistry. And all of a sudden I got into this airway thing. People are like, weren't you going to retire? I'm like, No, I'm more excited right now about what I'm doing than I've ever been, because when you go into holistic dentistry, you're really doing it because you want to help people, you want to improve their health, you want to improve their well-being. And when you take out amalgams and things, it takes a while. It's like, yeah, you can now detox it, but it's a process. When you do one of these appliances, people were coming back 2 weeks later saying, I don't know what this thing is, but this thing has changed my life. Like, this is the best thing I've done for myself. I'm sleeping better. I'm waking up feeling refreshed. And it's like I have my life back.
What does that cost?
It's about, that was the problem. One of the companies that I studied with, they charge dentists like ungodly amounts of money for the training, and they charge a lot. You have to use their appliances. So these dentists had to charge like $10,000 to $15,000 for this therapy. I'm like, no, I want to help as many people as I can. And when I'm sitting in front of someone that has breathing and sleep issues, like you want to help them. So my goal was to be very efficient and get the cost down to about the cost of like Invisalign, which is in that $6,000 to $7,000 range. And I tell people it's not inexpensive, but when you look at all the things that you do, like the supplements, the therapies you do, I get people coming in, they've spent tens and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're not, if you're not getting restorative sleep and you're spending the entire night in fight or flight mode, I don't care what supplement you take,
it's not going to help.
It's not going to help. Like our bodies are so amazing that if you just give it, I was compared to a race car. It's like you have this, F1 beautiful race car, but all you do is pull it to get gas. A Porsche, yeah. You have a 911 Turbo S, and
he's looking at Porsches right now with Dennis. We love Dennis. Thank you.
And it's like literally you just pull in to fill up with gas and you're back out on the road. Well, like how long can you do that before it breaks down? And that's our bodies. Like we need to go in and regenerate and do a little service on our bodies. And if you don't get that, it's just a matter of time before your body breaks down.
Well, and I think with the maintenance, the daily maintenance that you've talked about, if people are just better about brushing their teeth a few times a day and flossing, once or twice a day, which one would you recommend?
Oh, I would say at least twice.
At least twice. So if we do all that and we do everything you advise us, then you won't have root canals, correct? Or can you have root canals just because it's genetics, even if you're doing everything you're supposed to do?
Well, it's really interesting that you bring up the root canals because everybody thinks it's just from poor oral hygiene. One of the things that happens when people have this sleep apnea and these breathing disorders, and they're doing this clenching and grinding, the forces that they're putting on their teeth at night are substantially higher than what you would do during the day. So if I asked you to bite down right now and say bite as hard as you can, at night you're putting a force like 3 to 4 times as hard on your teeth. So what's going to happen? Like, are you going to crack teeth? Are you going to damage nerves? Are you going to mess up your joints?
Wow.
So sometimes I'll look at like some woman will come in, I'll look and see a couple missing teeth and root canals. I see the rest of the teeth is really good, healthy bone. I'm like, how'd you lose these? Like, well, they told me, that I'm not brushing well enough. But she goes, I'm doing everything exactly like they're telling me, but I keep breaking and cracking teeth. Well, it's because, and especially women have better adaptive mechanisms for sleep apneas, so they'll do things like clench and grind and prevent themselves from becoming apnea patients, but they pay a price both as far as oral health and as far as systemic health for doing that. So we kind of look, that's, you asked me earlier, like what makes us different. Like we try to look at the whole picture.
Well, I think something silly that kids do, those hard candies, those should be outlawed, because if kids are chewing on, I remember, crunching a Tootsie Pop, and my dad would be like,
oh yeah, those Tootsie Pops are like a dentist's dream. Like this is awesome for business.
I mean, seriously, how are these even? How can people even market that? Because it's going to lead to
jawbreakers.
Exactly.
Jawbreakers when I was a kid.
It's going to lead to cracking your teeth, which is going to lead to decay because it gets down in there, and then you get a root canal.
I'm starting to get the feeling that society in whole does not have our best health interest in mind.
Right.
If anything, I'm kind of skewed to the opposite. Like it's almost like everything they tell us is the opposite of what we should be.
So what should we eat? What should we be eating for optimal health?
Yeah, because pizza's a food group by itself, I think now.
Right?
I think Pizza Hut lobbied for that.
To have better health, for our whole body and for our teeth and everything, what are some certain things we should have like daily?
Well, I think just whole foods in general are, you know, someone once said, like, if it doesn't have any writing on it, go ahead and eat it.
I love that.
You know, and I tend to be a big follower of Weston A. Price, and you look at him like, you know, the raw dairy, you know, they've taken a lot of things that are really healthy for you and said, well, these are bad for you. Well, you know, dairy isn't bad for you by the time they get done with it. It's bad for you by the time you homogenize it, which most people don't even know what homogenization is, but it's horrible for your cardiovascular system. You homogenize it, you kill all the good enzymes, and now you have this dead white liquid and go and say it's bad for you. Well, yeah, it's so I'm a big believer in eating whole foods, and I'm also just a big believer in listening to your body. Like, I think, you know, I don't think you can say you should be vegan or you should eat this. I think we should listen to our own bodies. And
what about sugar? How do you feel about sugar?
To me, sugar is the enemy, not just of teeth, but systemically. I think sugar is really bad. It's not as bad as, you know, high fructose corn syrup, and actually, you know, they're making suger look good right now with all the
I know, right? With how bad that is.
Now I'm looking for, like, every once in a while, my guilty pleasure is like having a Coke, and you know, I'm going to Safeway looking for the Mexican Coke because it's got the real sugar in it.
That's
like,
right. Yeah. We, my wife and I call it being a choosy-tarian. We're just very choosy about what we put in our bodies.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I think if you listen to your body and go, hey, I eat this and it makes me feel better, or I eat this and it makes me feel worse, I think we just have to, I think we're all different, and you can't just say, you should eat this diet, this is what's best for you.
I always notice weird headaches and other side effects whenever I have artificial sugars or sweeteners. So I always, I love sweets, so I'll just have something with real sugar and try to burn that off in the gym and just try to make it up that way.
Yeah.
And just exercise some more, because artificial sweeteners for me, they do not work with my
do
body.
not.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can take one sip of Diet Coke and there's a headache immediately.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't like
aspartame,
it.
I mean, I think one of the
Saccharin,
it turns
aspartame,
into
all
like
the healthy
formaldehyde.
things. Yeah,
and,
it's that stuff is
like,
nasty.
even the Splendas, it's like a chlorinated product. I mean, it's
I have a question. Something I want to touch on. Chet just mentioned, because Chet seems to think that he can have all the sugar he wants as long as